All right, folks. Man, we've got a mixed bag today. Woo! Lots to talk about after last week, and this week is just as crazy. So put on your seatbelts and get strapped in and let's go because it's time for the Wayne and Collins Show.
Hey. Welcome. We're so glad to have you on this edition of the Wayne Carlin Show. And I tell you what, we take a lot of time each Monday when Wayne and I meet. We begin to think about what's going to be on our show for the next Wednesday. And I tell you what, there's so many things popping up that by the time we get to Wednesday, we've got to add some things. And so that's kind of the way it's been this week. And so we're going to be ready to hit you with a lot of the things that are hot today. So we can go ahead, tell them what we've got on tap today on our Wayne Carlin Show.
Man, what I'm sure everybody out there has been paying attention, but this new book written by Bob Woodward called Rage is all over the networks, and it's got some amazing insight into what's been going on in the White House and with the president. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about these latest shootings of police, just horrible shootings. One in Compton that happened at the end of last week was a straight up ambush. So we'll talk about that some. And then another one we had in Tulsa, we'll touch on a little bit. It's still ongoing, it's fresh. It just happened the other day, where sadly one officer was actually killed and another officer was wounded. That person has been caught and taken into custody. And then we're going to also touch on the Abraham Accords. Man, that's big. You know, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to that, but we'll talk about that a little bit too. So let's go. What do you want to say, Carl?
Hey, so it's like the apocalypse, you know, all these things happening, putting this together, all the Abraham Accords and everything. But hey, here's something we need to cover every week. It seems like now we're going to have a natural disaster update because we got fires out west. We got stuff happening in the Gulf, hurricanes. And Wayne happens to be out west. I happen to be on the Gulf Coast. And so I said, maybe we're bringing the problems. Maybe it's us. So Wayne, tell us about what's happening out in the west. What are you experiencing? And here's some other things that are happening.
Well, yesterday was the first day we could actually go outside and see blue skies. So for about the last week and a half, we have been looking at what started off orange, just like you see in the picture there. Then it went to gray. And then it was just looked like fog. And it's been that way. So this horrible air. In fact, they were saying on the news that here in the San Francisco Bay Area, up in Seattle area, and maybe it's Portland, the worst air quality as far as big cities go in the world. So that's worse than the cities in China and everywhere else. We have really been going through it. Today, I'm looking outside right now. Skies are clear, so some of the smoke is moving out. But it's just been really bad. So, I mean, as you can see, 90 fires raging in 10 different states. More than 5 million acres burned, you know, and sadly, right now the count is over 36 lives that have been lost, but there's still so many people unaccounted for. So this is truly a tragedy. This is the worst fires that we've had, you know, in modern history. So it's pretty bad. I don't know. The president met with the governor on Monday, and a lot of representatives from California and other areas regarding what's going on. Of course, they talked about climate change. They talked about the science behind it, and they definitely did not come together in agreement on anything, you know, and the president basically said it's going to go away. It's going to get cooler. Don't worry about it. And the other guys there just kind of shook their head. It's just a real situation that we got to figure out how to deal with. Both the federal government, state government got to come together and get this situation solved.
And then in California, once all that vegetation is burnt, then the next thing that usually happens is the rain comes, and then we start having mudslides and things like that in California. So yeah, one thing begets the other. And so, well, that's what's happening out west. What's happening on the Gulf Coast is we got Hurricane Sally right now, and Hurricane Sally, they said, is moving at 2 miles an hour.
Oh,
So she's going to be here a while, and they've already got some big time. They said 3 feet of water in Pensacola already. One of the good stories is about this. If you look at the graphic that we got there, there's a big tree that fell on a truck that was in Lake Charles. I drove through Lake Charles just this past weekend, going to a meeting in Baton Rouge, and that place was really devastated. And as I was coming back on Saturday, I was just saying, when if they can't take another one right now. They just it would be really devastated. And so it was a good news that it actually turned further east and didn't hit New Orleans, Baton Rouge area, but went more towards Mississippi area and hit more at Mobile, Alabama. And so, but still need to pray for those people because they're getting a ton of water, like I said, and that thing is moving so slowly. And they already Pensacola, they've already got flooding. So that's kind of the story. What's happening with the water and stuff.
I saw something last night, and they were saying there's over 5 different hurricanes or beginnings of hurricanes in the Atlantic right now, and this has never happened. It's just an amazing situation. So last week you asked me about is this affected? Is climate change affecting this? Man, we really need to look at what's going on with our weather systems, our fire systems. We haven't had a major earthquake recently, but we've had plenty of them already this year. So this is just getting kind of strange. Welcome to 2020.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, so people, end times prophecies, eschatology comes into play here. And so, yeah, lots of things that we can't explain. How many more times are we going to keep saying that we've never had it like this? It's never been like this. We're saying that quite often. All right.
We are, no doubt about it.
All right. So let's get on to our topics of the day. All right. Let's go.
The book.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. It's been a lot of, Bob Woodward's been interviewed almost every day this week from different news sources. Just a lot of information came out, and I asked a few people the question because one thing that he pointed out, and even though this book does not show the president in a good light, every interview, he let the president know he was recording. He let the president know what, this information was going to come out. Maybe he didn't know exactly when, but it was going to come out. Back on February 7th, and he interviewed him, and the president apparently at that point knew how dangerous this virus was, and he had mentioned that to Bob. This was a bad one. This, people are going to die. But immediately after that, he got on television and he made he put out public information, and he just painted it a whole different picture. And that, to me, that's a challenging, coming from a person who's in charge. And I know he said he didn't want to cause a panic and all of this stuff. But when you're in charge, to me, in my opinion, you have to be a person who tells the people what they need to hear, the information, the truth, integrity. And that's not what came out of that. That really bothered me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a key point that you made there. As the leader, you want the integrity. You got to be seen as in a person of integrity, because that's going to determine the level of followership you get. That's going to determine how your people respond to you in your society, in your domain of leadership. And so that's very important. And so that's what we'll have to see, because, for instance, an objective person might say, it appears to me that you misled the American people. And his response to that will determine whether or not the people believe that he, in fact, did mislead them. I just can't, I don't see anything where people wouldn't see that as misleading. Although, like I said, if I was his press secretary, even if in order to protect him, I could make something up, but that's a hard one to sell. I would say that's a hard one to sell. And I understand from the leadership viewpoint, you don't want your people to panic, but at the same time, you don't want to be seen as lying to your people, because this is what I used to always say, that your people can take it. I used to even say that as far as parenting, your children can handle the truth, just don't lie to them. They can handle the truth, don't lie to them. And I think that's a very good statement to be made in any leadership position. They can handle the truth, don't lie to them, And so we can justify oftentimes why, we're trying to do this on their behalf. But I tell you what, when your people believe that you're lying to them, bad things happen.
What do you think about the argument? I think we touched on this last week, but about if information had been properly given from the very beginning, that lives would have been saved, that unfortunately, because they didn't get the correct information and didn't take proper precautions, they may have died unnecessarily. What do you think about that?
Well, of course, hindsight is always 2020. And if we'd have run a different play in the Super Bowl on that last play, then we might have won rather than lost. And so, yeah, you've always got that viewpoint. And the other side of that is anytime you make a statement like that, then what you're saying is also the fact that at some point the person did do something, then they are saving further lives. And so, and it's always, it could be much worse and it could be better. So what we have to do is deal with where we are, and we have to have an objective view about why we are where we are, and then begin to try to make the best decisions going forward. And so, and I think at any point you can always say that about any leader. And like I said, it's up to the people to determine whether or not this person should have made better decisions earlier, or if they're making the right decisions now and we're satisfied with that. The people will ultimately make those decisions, but you can always do that. And so leaders, that's why leaders don't need to lead based on polls and what the people say. They need to try to ensure that they're doing the right thing right now, every time.
Good point. Good point.
So, all right, but what about some of the other things? Some of the other points made in the book, I saw some of the excerpts about that he made concerning race. And and it was interesting the way it was set up by Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward was talking and he was saying, hey, you and I are old white men in our 70s, and we both have an extreme amount of privilege, and the country is experiencing this racial reckoning that should have happened because we've been doing these bad things. And he talked and talked and talked. And then when he got to Trump just looked at him and said, wow, you've been drinking the Kool-Aid, haven't you? Saying, hey, I don't see any of this. And that goes along with what Trump has done recently. If you saw that last week, he stopped the Department, or not the Department of Defense. I'm always thinking military, Department of Defense, but he stopped government organizations from funding training using critical race theory. And so a lot of people were saying he stopped funding diversity training, which is really not the same thing, but that's the way they played it. And so, but I think so that was a key point. But now this is a case where you have two people with different views on quote unquote race in our society. And I don't think many people are going to understand that, but because this is the work that we do, we kind of understand that. I understand exactly what Donald Trump is saying. I understand exactly what Bob Woodward is saying. And the reality is this, and this is what's the most amazing. If America could understand this, they're both right. They are both right. But Americans don't understand that there is some stuff that has happened historically, and there is some racial reckoning that is taking place. Right now. And Donald Trump is right in the fact that but you can't use that to determine everything that we do today. So critical race theory, which says, but it's got to be considered in everything, is not the same thing as saying a racial reckoning is happening. And so both things can be true. And that's what people don't understand. They think it's got to be one or the other. Both things can be true. And so we need to understand that.
It would have been nice to hear him when he said you drank the Kool-Aid, to hear him go into a little bit more detail about that. And maybe he did. Maybe it's just an excerpt. We didn't hear it. You might need to read the book.
You got to read the book.
Yeah, right. So you just give a little part, because really, when you hear him speak, usually he'll say something that makes you think, no, you drank the Kool-Aid, partner. But then other times he will say things like, I'm really for, whatever. I'm for African Americans, and I'm the greatest president for them since Lincoln, and all of this stuff, right? So sometimes you really just don't know where this dude is coming from, except, some of his actions that he takes.
And because he's not in control of his own narrative, then it's co-opted by people on the left and the right to use it for their purposes. And so if I want to really be extreme against him, I can co-opt it and do that. If I want to be an extreme supporter for him, I can co-opt it and do that. And that's what our country is doing. And that's why we are where we are. We've got these, and there are very few people who are just saying, hey, except people in the unity movement saying, hey, we need to understand both sides. Let's come together. Let's get some resolution. Let's talk about these things so that we can truly understand what everybody's saying. And then let's come up with some solutions. So, but that's not really happening. Okay. Right. All right. Well, and he talked about, of course, about Biden and Harris, and said the same things that you expect that he often says out in public. The things that one of the biggest reasons people hate our president is because of the way he demeans and makes personal attacks on people. And so he called Kamala Harris nasty and things like that. And so that's brought out, of course, in the book on the way he treats them. And I think that Woodward says that that's part of his larger narrative. And he would say that, like, for instance, on Harris, that's his larger narrative on race. And I don't know how he would characterize that on the attacks on Biden. But I mean, it's just what you do in politics when it comes to his attacks. I think on Biden, he's trying to beat down the opposition. So
Yeah, well, and I guess the last thing I think Bob Woodward said at the end of the book, he just made a summation of this person, this individual is not equipped. This is not the man for the job that we need right now. And that was how he finished his book, And I think Trump's response was initially he put out that this book was going to be fake and all of this information, but everything that he got in there came straight from the horse's mouth. And apparently some interviews with other people too, like Mattis and different people. So it's going to be interesting to see the whole thing.
I love when those people make those statements like that. And you can make an objective statement and say, I don't think he has the qualifications. My personal view is I don't think he has the qualifications for the job or whatever. But when you say that he shouldn't be in the job, then you're really casting down the American system of elections. You're saying the American people don't get to select who they want to be in office. You don't get to determine that, Mr. Individual. I can have my view on whether or not this guy is qualified, or whether he could be a better leader, or whether his tax policy is bad, or whether his policy on the climate is bad. I can make those I can say that personally, what I feel about that. But for you to say the American people, I mean, because that's what you're saying, the American people, you picked the wrong guy. I mean, that's your opinion. The American people might end up picking him again. What are you going to be mad at the American people? And so American people picked Obama, and people shouldn't have been upset that they picked him. They picked him. This is our leader. Let's see how we can make this country move regardless of who the leader is. And I don't think people are able to do that.
Well, I think that would be true maybe from just average Joe citizen who we just watched up on the news. But you're talking about a man who's been in his presence, and he's interviewed, I don't know, I won't even say hundreds of people, but tons of people. He's a reporter who's been around. He's in the game. And so for him to make a comment like that, I think it's a little bit deeper than just saying, in my opinion, he's going by evidence, and it still boils down to what you're saying. It's the American people's vote. But I think his opinion in this situation carries some weight.
Well, yeah. And so, yeah, it's just like, so do I carry more weight than Bob Woodward on this deciding who should be a military commander because I was in the military? It's still my viewpoint, and it depends. I mean, so at the end of the day, yeah, we're American. We're 330 million people, and about 280 million of those, however many, excluding the kids, have a say in who is president. However many people want to vote have a say in who's president. So I'm just a guy, and yeah, my viewpoint might be weighed as more heavily because of that. But leave it up to the people. Leave that up to the people, and state your views. Your views are great, all right, but I think in his position, and I think in these positions like Woodward and others in these positions, I mean, I think the responsibility is bigger for them. And I think he tried to do an objective job in his book. I don't think he was trying to I don't think his book was written as an anti-Trump book. I think it was written as this is the objective Trump book. So I think he did a good job with that. But I think his talk, and as he hits the circuit, then I think he's going way out of his book. And of course, what does that do? At the end of the day, it makes sales on the book. So you got that. All right, let's go to the some of the infuriating news. And that is, all right, so you got this narrative. We keep talking about narrative. We got to do a lot of stuff. We're going to have to do some training stuff on narrative so people can understand what's happening. But because the narrative of both defunding police and police are bad and brutalizing our citizens, well, like we kind of have said about other things, all these things are having a payday, a reckoning. A lot of people, you'll see some of the posts out there talking about their roosters, they're coming home to roost.
Right.
You get all that. In Christian world, we call it sowing and reaping is happening. That's what we call it. And so that is going to continue to happen. And the question is this: what role do each of us have to stop that cycle, or to begin to sow better seeds so that we reap better? And I think this is a case where some of the people, when the cops were shot there in Compton, they go to the hospital, they're taken to the hospital, and you've got protesters out there saying, let them die, let them die. Now that's just sick stuff. That's sick. And that's one of those cycles where it will never end. And we will forever be in this cycle of hate begetting hate. And at some point, we've got to stop the hate and we got to say unity and love begets unity and love. Forgiveness begets forgiveness. And we got to seem to go forward. Because everybody should know the story. One of the things I like about this story that hasn't been getting a lot of play is the story of heroism, I would say, from the one officer to the other. And you can see kind of in this picture, she's bleeding from from getting shot in the jaw. And I mean, there's blood, and they've got videos out there online where you can see what she's doing. She's helping her partner. She was 36 years old. I think he was 24, and he had been shot, and I think seemingly in a worse condition. And she was providing a tourniquet, I was like, see, for a military guy, you're like, oh, that's what I'm talking about. Taking care of your comrade in battle in the midst of the heat, not worried about, am I going to get shot again? I got to take care and make sure this person survives. That's a great story. And so that was it. And of course, the other Tulsa police shooting is just
before you move in, because I did hear one thing about those people who were blocking the entranceway. I'm sure some of them were local, but they are also talking about some of those people were brought in, and of course not verified. You know, that's something worth looking into a little bit deeper. But that some of those people were actually paid to do that, which wouldn't surprise me with what's going on right now, with all the extra agitators that are going on, and when peaceful riots erupt into these negative things. Some of those people they're coming in from states far away from where it's going on, and who's paying for that? So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of.
Yeah, and that's the question. Who's paying for that?
Mm-hmm.
I know some people are saying Black Lives Matter has gotten over maybe into $1 billion. And like I said, they haven't built any buildings. Nobody's disclosing what's happening with that money or what are they funding with that money. And I contend that, man, protesters can't really stand out there because they got stuff to do. And you can't protest for 3 months. But we've got protests going on for 3 months in some of these cities, more than 90 days. And I'm going, I don't know. Something needs to be checked, though, because I'm in a case like this. How are those people, if they were shipped in, these people just got shot, they go straight to the hospital. How can they be there that fast?
Right.
Unless you had some emergency response crew who's always ready around the country when one of these things happens so they can be on the spot. How do you do that? And how do you fund that? Yeah.
Well, I really, I want them to catch this person really fast, because look, that person is no taller than the door. Mm-hmm. Is that a child? Is it a diminutive person, adult? Who and why? Was this gang related? Was this an initiation? Was it payback? There's so many questions to be answered. So we really need to know. They really need to catch this person and bring them in if they can.
Mm-hmm. True. So a lot of work on the hands of the police, and the environment which police have to work these days is just really challenging, and so it calls for great leadership, calls for great training. And I think it calls for support from American citizens. I mean, I know when I get pulled over nowadays, if I get pulled over, I haven't gotten pulled over in a while. I get pulled over, I understand. I mean, and that's what empathy does. And everybody needs empathy. And as soon as you say that, people are going to say, well, they're not showing empathy to me. What are you doing? What are you doing? Each of us should have that as a responsibility for ourselves. I'm going to show some empathy. So when I get pulled over by a cop, I'm going to make sure I'm doing everything. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I'm going to do everything that I need to, because I understand they've got a tough job to do. And I remember one time I even apologized to this officer. Hey, I'm sorry for breaking the law, because I should not have been, and I will be a better citizen, whatever. So tough stuff, man. But we just got to make that our responsibility to be better all the way around as citizens.
No doubt about that, but the problem is, and again, I was in law enforcement. The problem is sometimes some officers, not all, forget that they work for the public. They work for the people. People pay their salaries, and it becomes more of, don't disrespect me, because if you do, I'm going to put the hammer down. And it shouldn't be that way either. I like what you said. Be respectful. I taught all my children that. Of course, because I'm in law enforcement, you should be respectful. But at the same time, that officer has a responsibility to show that same amount of respect to the citizens, the people who pay their salaries.
And so when that, and here's a good hypothetical. And so when that officer says, get out of the car, and they refuse to get out of the car, then, and that's what I get. If we did an analysis on every one of these situations where an officer was first disobeyed, and if we put all those aside, I wonder how many cases we would be left with. If there was one command, if there was at some point in every one of these infractions where a citizen disobeyed the officer, I wonder how many of these we would be left with. And maybe that's the thing we need to see, because I say that when you do that, and when you disrespect a police officer, a legitimate authority, then you've opened up a whole new can of worms. And I think that's where we go in so many of these situations. Now, people are going to say, yeah, but they still don't have a right to do this. But man, gosh, that first call, if you had done this one thing, it's like my mom, when I used to get a whooping when I was a kid, if you had done this thing right the first time, you wouldn't be in this bad situation right now. And that puts a responsibility on everybody, you know, and it says the officers, and it gives the officers some authority to say, once you've disrespected or disobeyed a police officer, bad things can happen. That might be the right thing, you know? And I know in our country right now, we're saying, no, you can't, but there's a line you got to draw. Yeah, but that's why the line's got to be drawn clearly on your responsibility to respect that authority. Because once you violate that, it goes downhill. I know here in Texas, we had the case years ago of Sandra Bland. And that same police officer, this is one that most people don't know about, but you can see two different interactions. Before he stopped Sandra Bland, he stopped another person. Same profile as Sandra Bland, you know, person of color, female, whatever. Polite, very nice was the officer to that person, because that person never disobeyed or was disobedient. You know, so, you know, and yeah, that's not justification for, in these cases, when we say killing someone, but my goodness, I say it comes back to, once again, our issue with authority in America. And why is that happening? Lots of things, man.
Yep.
But, you know, we'll always argue about that. We can keep on. We'll go with that, because I believe that it goes back to those basic things. So let's talk about the Abraham Accords. Are this supposedly historical and diplomatic pact between Israel, Bahrain, and the UAE? And this is going to be pretty big, as we talked about apocalypse and eschatology, the end times. You know, this is a big thing, because what you have here, of course, is you have the Jews siding up with some Arabs. And I haven't done all the research in my Bible, because you can't understand this without the context of the Bible and understanding Old Testament scripture and how that aligns with New Testament prophecies and stuff like that. If you don't do that, then you're going to look at this and go, it's totally unrelated. I think this is really related to all the stuff that we see happening in our country. It's related to the weather stuff that's happening. People call it climate change. Yeah, it's that was all that stuff been prophesied as well. And so I think it's going to be important for people to kind of get an understanding of how these things are linked. And we can look at them separately, but this is pretty big, because the issue with the Abraham Accords is the marrying up of Jews and Arabs. And what that means in this case is these Jews and Arabs, Israel, Bahrain, and the UAE, now stand in opposition to some Arab states, and most notably Iran. And so that's what we're really going to be looking at. What is going to be the response of Iran to this? Because the pending thing will be, what is going to happen with Saudi Arabia? What are they going to do? Because Saudi Arabia is the big money, and Saudi Arabia can buy any kind of support that they need. They can pay to get whatever they need. And so are they going to now join up with Israel? That would be amazing, because of course the Sunnis of Saudi Arabia already had a problem with the Shias of Iran in the first place. And so you got that religious divide happening. And so this is going to be, so this is pretty big. And it didn't get as much play, and I think it'll get maybe more in the upcoming days and weeks as people begin to understand it, and especially if some of those other Arab countries join in, it'll get more play. But I heard Nancy Pelosi say that she did this signing like Trump did the coronavirus back in February. He said it's a hoax. She said she called this a distraction. She said the Trump is just doing this as a distraction. Middle East peace has been something going on for decades, pretty much ever since the founding of Israel. And she called it a distraction. I went, okay, all right.
From what? Distraction from what?
She's saying from these issues, she thinks of him not dealing with coronavirus and all these
Yeah.
other things, his failure in coronavirus, his failing economy and all these things. And so, yeah, so that's what they're doing.
Maybe it's a distraction from her going to the beauty salon. I don't know.
Melanie didn't know we were live on here. She's coming in with her, throwing her comments in. Okay. If you're going to be on the show, I'm going to have you on the show next week. So you're going to have to yell from the kitchen.
Yeah, interesting stuff, man. We, like you said, definitely need to tighten up on our prophecy scriptures here.
Yeah.
And, but what we all know is that prophecy is true, and at some point we're going to start seeing all of it unfold.
Yep. Hey, and let me make one final point before I have Wayne close out with the regular close of the show. It wasn't on our agenda, I know, today, but I sent a link out, posted something on Facebook that had Condoleezza Rice speaking at the Hoover Institution. It's out there on YouTube. You can go look out there. Condoleezza Rice, Hoover Institution, put it in. And I told people, I said, your IQ will go up by 20 points if you just listen to her speak. It's just amazing. And I said, we don't have anybody in this country who can rival her in her breadth of knowledge, her depth of knowledge, and in her ability to articulate that. She's a teacher. She's a preacher. She's everything. I said, if she was in a debate with Biden and Trump, it just would be embarrassing for the other two. It would just be embarrassing for both of them. She's so good. So if you get a chance, go watch that. If you want your IQ to go up, if you want to be smarter about the world and how we need to approach it, go watch Condoleezza Rice. And so we'll talk about that more as we go toward the future. Okay, Wayne, go ahead and close us out, man.
All right, guys. Well, here at Erase Race, we still looking for your support. Many of you have supported us along the way. Thank you. We appreciate that, but don't stop. Continue. We have our where you can continuously donate to us on a monthly basis. That'll help out a lot. We have a lot of programs that we are in the process of instituting as soon as Corona's over, back on the road across the country. So looking forward to all that. So we have T-shirts, we have great hoodies, face masks, everything that you could want, and so we just appreciate you guys. If you want to get to work, get your hands nice and dirty, get out here and help volunteer as we start to set up our cities and our programs in our various cities across the country. We're going to need your help in that. So just go to our website, eraseraces.com, and click on donate, where you can donate, or if you want to be a volunteer, click on that as well. And we definitely appreciate you guys, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Next time on the Wayne Carlin Show. Now you know, now you know. Thank you all for coming today.
See y'all soon. Why the music so low? Crank it. Now you know, now you know.
Yeah, I'm going to have the wife on the show next week since she wants to step in.
All
she
right.
wants to have her comments.
Let's bring some intelligence to the show.